Dear listeners, before I take you deep into the depths of my soul, let me wish you endless happiness, tender love, and inner peace. May each new day bring you joy and warmth, like the gentle touch of the morning sun. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so now. It only takes a few seconds, but your support means the world to me. I never thought my world could collapse in an instant, but it happened on that cold, rainy evening when fate decided to test me to my limits. I thought our family home, where my husband and I had built a life together over many years, was a fortress of love and trust. We had been married for 13 years, and our story began 15 years ago. Filled with dreams, hopes, and shared plans for the future. We had 2 wonderful children, a big cozy house full of memories and happy moments. But on that fateful night, everything changed. I decided to stop by the house of my best friend Maria, with whom I had always shared my deepest secrets and dreams. That day, the rain was pouring relentlessly, and the drops of water, like cold needles, tapped against the windows, creating an ominous rhythm that foreshadowed disaster. In my mind, I imagined a light-hearted meeting, a warm evening that promised comfort after a long and exhausting day. No one could have guessed that my expectations would turn into a real nightmare. As I approached Maria's house, I immediately noticed something was off. The door, which usually greeted me with a smile and warmth, now seemed covered in a cold shadow. The charm of the familiar space had vanished, leaving behind only a grim premonition. I knocked, and in response, I heard a strange, unrecognizable sound. With each passing second, a sense of unease grew inside me, but I decided to enter anyway. As soon as the door opened, I found myself in a narrow hallway lit by the dim glow of an old lamp. Every shadow seemed alive, reflecting my inner turmoil. My steps slowed, and without taking a moment to look around, I headed toward the living room, where I had always imagined an atmosphere of friendship and coziness. And then, as if in slow motion, my eyes met a scene I will never forget. In the depths of the living room, in the gloom and flickering light, I saw him, my Alexei, and Maria. They were standing so close that their bodies seemed to merge in a single surge of passion, with no shame or secrecy between them. I froze in place. Before me was the terrible truth I had refused to believe for so long. My heart was pounding wildly, as if trying to escape my chest, and every second felt like an eternity. I felt a coldness piercing every cell of my body, and at the same time, a strange sense of relief, as if the illusion of trust I had built over the years had finally crumbled to dust. Tears, invisible, streamed down my cheeks, mixing with the rain tapping against the window. In the silence, broken only by my barely audible breathing, Alexei suddenly spoke. "I can explain." His voice, trembling and uncertain, sounded so absurd that I couldn't make out a single word. He was trying to find an excuse that could never drown out the pain of betrayal. Meanwhile, Maria, as if catching herself in something she didn't want to admit, turned to me. Her eyes, filled with passion and perhaps bitter remorse, met mine. In that moment, I saw not only desire, but also the realization of a horrifying reality. In a quiet but piercing voice, she said, "I've loved him for a long time." And without waiting for a response, she slowly pulled a small bag from her purse, inside of which was a used condom, a silent but undeniable proof of infidelity. Each second stretched into eternity, and my mind, as if trapped, couldn't grasp the full depth of the tragedy. I barely managed to whisper, "Why?" My voice trembled, and every word felt like a cry from my soul, tearing everything apart. Alexei, clearly stunned, tried to explain, but his excuses sounded hollow and unconvincing. It's just that I was helping her fix the closet," he stammered. "You know how hard it is to work with that." His words were so absurd that I couldn't believe my ears. In his eyes, I saw fear and confusion, but no real remorse. At that moment, my soul was torn between memories of years of happiness and the realization that everything I had believed to be solid was an illusion. Images of happy family evenings, our children's laughter, and conversations by the fireplace flashed through my mind, and now it all seemed meaningless in the face of betrayal. Every detail, from the cold rain outside to the dim light in the hallway, intensified the feeling of devastation and despair. I stood there, completely numb, unable to move or speak. Inside me, a storm of emotions raged: fear, pain, anger, and an unbearable sense of loss. Every sound, every flicker of light seemed like a cruel reminder that my life had fallen apart. I tried to gather my thoughts, but they wandered like they were lost in a maze, finding no way out. "How could you?" My words, filled with pain and confusion, hung in the air, unanswered. Alexei remained silent, his gaze full of fear and confusion, while Maria, as if understanding the depth of her betrayal, quietly laughed through her tears. That laugh, filled with both despair and hopelessness, only deepened my sense of betrayal. I felt something inside me break. Years of trust, love, and hope disappeared in an instant. With every drop of rain outside, with every echo of his words, my life was divided into before and after that fateful encounter. A quiet but persistent voice echoed in my soul. "You are strong. You can get through this." But how do you find the strength when your heart is shattered into 1,000 pieces? Standing in the middle of that gloomy hallway, I realized that this moment would be a turning point in my life. Everything I knew about love, trust, and family happiness had been destroyed. But as painful as this truth was, it gave me a chance to start over, to rediscover myself, sort through my feelings, and perhaps forgive the person who had once meant everything to me. At that very moment, I felt a spark of hope ignite deep within my soul. That spark, though barely visible through the thick veil of pain, promised that even after the darkest night, dawn would come. Ahead of me lay a long journey of self-discovery, battling inner demons, and perhaps forgiveness. But forgiveness is not just a word. It's an endless process, full of internal conflicts and painful reflections. I asked myself, how can I forgive? How can I rebuild lost trust? Maybe all of this is just an illusion I've built around my soul for so long. Every drop of rain tapping against the windows reminded me of how cruel reality can be when ideals crumble under the weight of betrayal. In that hour, when time seemed to stand still, I felt that I had been given an impossible task: to find the strength to keep living. My mind was flooded with images of happy days that had now turned into painful memories, and I knew that ahead of me lay a difficult path, full of pain, doubt, and perhaps redemption. And so, standing among the shadows of the past and the light flickering through the darkness, I took the first painful step into the unknown. It was at that moment that I made a decision, not to let myself drown in bitterness and suffering, but to start searching for answers within myself. Even if it meant letting go of illusions and accepting the harsh truth. My hands, cold and trembling, carried not only the pain of betrayal, but also a quiet determination to find meaning in this tragedy. Every breath I took was filled with despair, and every exhale, a quiet voice of hope. I knew that difficult trials lay ahead, but deep inside, a thought emerged that perhaps even in this chaos, I could find a spark capable of reigniting my lost faith in life. And so, my dear listeners, I invite you to join me on this journey through the labyrinth of my soul, a journey filled with tears, passions, betrayal, and the struggle for the right to happiness. Subscribe to my channel. Your support is so important to me, as it helps me continue this long journey where every new page is filled not only with pain, but also with hope for a brighter future. After that fateful night, I woke up in a world where nothing was the same. I ran out of Maria's house, unable to stay in that space that now seemed like a vessel of pain and betrayal. The rain was still pouring, and its cold drops, like probing needles, penetrated every cell of my body, reflecting the inner ice that had gripped my heart. Returning home, I found familiar walls that had once been filled with laughter, joy, and family warmth, now altered and foreign. Every photo, every little thing reminded me of the days when Alexei and I had lived in unwavering faith in love. But now, all those images were tinged with the bitterness of loss, like colours on a cracked canvas that could never be restored. That night, I lay awake, thinking about what had happened, trying to find some thread that could piece together the fragments of my soul. Time dragged on endlessly, and in every moment, I felt the full weight of betrayal. It seemed as if everything I had known was gone forever, leaving behind only echoes of happier days. Suddenly, the phone rang. I hesitated to answer. How could I open myself up again to someone who had already shattered my trust? But the ringing wouldn't stop, as if fate demanded that I hear his voice. When I finally picked up, a new wave of pain unfolded before me, wrapped in words of apology. Marina, please forgive me. I've realized how much I've destroyed everything we held dear. Alexei began, his voice quiet and trembling, filled with despair and hopelessness. I listened to him, feeling each word tighten my heart even more. Why? Why did you do this? I asked, unable to hold back the pain that burst out like a cry from my soul. His excuses sounded unconvincing, like a random collection of words that could dispel the darkness, but not extinguish the fire raging inside me. Every word he spoke reminded me of how we had once built our world, full of promises and dreams, now destroyed by one fateful act. The next morning, I found a small note on the table. Alexei's neatly written words said that he had gotten a tattoo, a symbol of a new life, an attempt to atone for his guilt, a sign that he was ready to fight for our future. I held the note in my hands, feeling a spark of hope flicker inside me, but also an overwhelming sense of bitterness. How could I rebuild lost trust when the wounds were still fresh? The days became an endless struggle between the past and the present. Every room in our house reminded me of happy moments. Long conversations by the fireplace and the quiet laughter of our children. Now, those images were mixed with pain and bitterness, like colors on a crumpled palette where it was impossible to separate light from dark. One evening, during one of those long, agonizing nights when the silence became too deafening, I went outside. The cold air pierced me to the bone, but it was in that cold that I sought answers. On the quiet street, I noticed a street artist creating a bright mural on an old brick wall. His work breathed life, even amidst the harshness of the world. I approached him and almost silently asked, "How do you find the strength to create when there's so much pain around you?" His gaze, full of wisdom and compassion, penetrated deep into my being. Every drop of pain, every scar, it's part of your story. Without them, you wouldn't know what true joy is. Even in the darkest moments of life, there's always room for light. His words made me think. Maybe it's through acknowledging my pain and accepting my wounds that I can find a way to heal. Maybe my pain isn't the end, but the beginning of a journey to rediscover myself. When I returned home, I spent hours flipping through old journals, trying to find comfort in the lines where my soul had once been full of hope and dreams. Each entry brought back memories of who I used to be and who I could be again. If only I could forgive not only Alexei, but also myself for allowing fate to strike so cruelly. That evening, when the city was enveloped in night silence, the door of our house creaked open again. On the doorstep stood Alexei, with new flowers in his hands and a tattoo proudly declaring his repentance. His eyes glistened with tears, but they also held uncertainty and fear. We both stood there in the dimly lit hallway, like two broken souls trying to find common ground through the pain. "Marina, give me a chance," he said, his voice quiet and trembling. "I know words can't undo what's been lost, but I'm ready to prove that my love can grow again, that I can change for both of us." I felt a battle raging inside me. My mind demanded that I hold on to my pain, while my heart sought even a grain of comfort. "How can I believe you'll never betray me again?" I asked, my voice filled with both anger and despair. Silence, heavy with ordinary sadness, hung between us, and I saw despair flicker across his face, as if he realized the hopelessness of his situation. I understood that any word now was just a drop in the ocean of loss, but still, a desire to find a path to forgiveness began to awaken within me. A new beginning where pain could turn into wisdom and betrayal into a lesson. In the days that followed, I immersed myself in solitude, trying to make sense of the chaos in my mind. My evenings became times of long conversations with myself, as I tried to figure out how to move forward when my heart was torn apart. Every encounter with Alexei turned into a quiet battle between the past and the present, between love and hate. His apologies, gifts, tender touches. All of it seemed like an attempt to erase the pain, but the reality remained unchanged. Betrayal had left a deep scar that wasn't easy to heal. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw not only a weary woman, but also a glimpse of who I had been before this horror. I tried to remember how to enjoy life, how to savor moments when even the smallest details, the smell of fresh bread, the soft rustle of leaves outside the window, could bring me joy. And so, gradually, amidst the swirling pain, an idea began to emerge. Perhaps my strength lies in the ability to forgive and find light in the darkness. I started writing down my thoughts, turning them into words on the pages of a new journal. Each line became a step toward healing, a testament that even after the strongest storm, you can find the strength to rise again. In the quiet of the night, when the city slept, I sat by the window, watching the cool streetlights, and wondered, will I ever be able to trust again? Can love enter my heart again without bringing pain? These questions echoed in my soul, slowly dissolving into the night. But time, as always, moved forward, and each new dawn brought a little more understanding and strength. I began to feel that forgiveness wasn't just a gift for someone else. It was, first and foremost, a gift to myself. Perhaps forgiveness couldn't erase the pain of the past, but it could become a bridge to a new life, where I could find peace and learn to love again. With each passing day, I learned to accept my vulnerability, seeing it not as a weakness, but as an opportunity for growth. I realized that every time I allowed myself to feel the pain, I was getting closer to the moment when I could rise again, like a bird, wounded but unbroken. And so, my journey continues. A journey filled with an eternal struggle between the past and the present, between pain and hope. Each new encounter with life is a challenge, but also a chance to become better, stronger, wiser. I don't know how much longer it will take for the wounds to heal, but deep inside, I have the confidence I can find light even in the deepest darkness. Dear listeners, I continue my story not only to share my pain, but also to show that even after the worst betrayal, you can find a way back to yourself. Subscribe to my channel. Your support helps me move forward, find new strength, and believe that after every storm, there's a clear sky. Several weeks had passed since that fateful evening, and I felt time, as if holding its breath, slowly beginning to put everything in its place. Every minute became a test, every morning a struggle not to drown in a flood of resentment and pain. But it was in those long hours of solitude, in quiet conversations with myself, that I began to realize being betrayed isn't just about pain, it's also an opportunity to rediscover yourself, to step beyond old fears and find a strength you never knew you had. I often spent evenings sitting by the window where the flickering city lights mixed with the shadows of my past. The rain, which had once seemed like an ominous harbinger of disaster, now became a kind of rhythm, reminding me that even in the dampest, coldest nights, there's always room for renewal. Its steady tapping became a meditation for me, a soundscape to my thoughts as I slowly, step by step, learned to let go of the past. One evening, when sadness seemed overwhelming, I decided to go for a walk. The cold wind cut through me, and every step on the wet pavement echoed in my soul. At that moment, I ran into an old acquaintance, someone with whom I had once shared joys and secrets, but who, as it turned out, had also been through tough times. We sat on a bench in the park, and in the semi-darkness of the streets, under the flickering streetlights, words of support and understanding began to flow. "Marina, I know how hard this is for you. she said quietly, her voice like soothing music, capable of quieting the noise of my inner turmoil. But you must remember, even in the deepest darkness, there's always a flicker of light somewhere. Don't be afraid to give yourself a chance to heal. Her words touched me like a gentle caress, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope awaken in my soul. Returning home that night, I realized that a turning point had come in my life. The pain, as an inevitable companion, was still with me. But now I understood that it didn't have to define my future. I had to make a choice. Let the past destroy me, or find the strength to rise and keep living. Every thought, every memory, they became the building blocks with which I began to construct a new version of myself. The next day, a quiet tension filled our apartment, where the rustle of every heart seemed audible. Alexei was trying to rebuild some semblance of our former relationship. His apologies, accompanied by a bouquet of flowers and warm, trembling words, sounded sincere. But inside me, the echoes of past pain were still fresh. "Marina, I understand that I've caused you unbearable pain," he said, trying to make eye contact, as if hoping his eyes could convey the remorse his words couldn't. "I want to make things right, to become the person you once believed in, and I'm willing to do anything to regain even a fraction of the lost trust." I listened to him, but in my heart, a new understanding had already taken root. Love, as I came to realize, isn't unconditional forgiveness. It's a constant choice to live and learn. I had to learn to distinguish between memories of happy days and what had happened on that fateful evening. Every time I looked into his eyes, I remembered not only the pain of betrayal, but also those moments when we were together, when our conversations were filled with sincerity and care. In those days, I turned more and more to my journal, my constant companion on this difficult journey. Flipping through its yellowed pages, I wrote down not only my pain, but also small victories, moments when I smiled, when a new light sparked in my soul, when I could feel that even a broken heart holds the potential for healing. Each entry became a testament to my struggle with my own fears and doubts. To each day I learned to let go and forgive, first others, and then myself. One day, after a particularly heart-wrenching conversation with Alexei, when his words once again mixed with my inner resistance, I decided it was time to speak about what was tormenting me. We sat at the kitchen table, where the cold morning light seeped through the windows, and I, with a trembling voice, began, "Alexei, I feel like there's an emptiness between us now that can't be filled with simple apologies. I need to know that you're ready not just to talk, but to act." He looked at me uncertainly, as if afraid to answer, and after a long silence he quietly said, "I understand. I need to prove to you that I've changed, that I'm ready to take responsibility for my actions, even if it's a long and difficult road." At that moment, I felt not only pain, but also a desire to fight for myself, for the life I had once dreamed of building. I realized that forgiveness wasn't a gift for him. It was a gift I was giving myself, to free myself from the chains of the past and start living fully, even if that life would now be different. Over time, our conversations became less filled with despair and more mature, deeper. We talked not only about our mistakes, but also about our dreams, fears, and how to build a future where each of us could find peace. There were days when I felt something real growing between us again, a thin thread connecting hearts that had once been on the brink of breaking. I started seeing a psychologist to sort through my feelings, to understand why I had trusted so easily and how to learn to protect my inner self. These sessions opened new horizons for me. I learned to accept my vulnerability and see it not as a weakness, but as a source of strength. Each session was like a small ritual of cleansing, where every tear, every quiet confession became a step toward inner awakening. One evening, sitting in a cozy armchair with a cup of warm tea, I realized that the voice of the person I used to be, strong, independent, capable of loving without hesitation, was still alive in my soul. That voice, though muffled by the echoes of pain, was now growing stronger. I remembered moments when I had laughed until I cried with friends, when I had dreamed of a future full of joy and discovery, when every morning had been filled with the anticipation of miracles. And so, on a rainy night, when the city slept to the sound of raindrops tapping against the window, I did what I had feared most. I opened my heart again. Not to forget the past, but to accept it as part of my journey. I realized that sometimes forgiveness begins with simply acknowledging your feelings, with having an honest conversation with yourself. I stood up, walked to the mirror, and looked at my reflection for a long time. In my eyes, I saw not only wounds, but also a glimmer of a new life. A quiet call to freedom and love that should be pure and sincere. I whispered to myself, "You deserve happiness. You deserve love that won't destroy but will heal." Those words became my mantra, which I repeated every day, filling myself with the confidence that a bright future awaited me, no matter what had happened in the past. The path to healing was not easy, and many nights I spent in reflection, battling the remnants of pain and doubt. But with each new dawn, as the first rays of sunlight gently entered the room, I understood more clearly that my experiences had become the foundation for a new, stronger, and wiser version of myself. Now, when I looked back, I didn't just feel loss. I saw lessons learned through suffering and a belief that every wound can heal if given time and if I allow myself to be vulnerable. Alexei was changing too. His actions were no longer hasty attempts to make amends, and he began to openly talk about his fears and mistakes. Together, we sought compromises, learning to rebuild bridges of trust. Sometimes our conversations turned into quiet moments of understanding where even silence could say more than words. But the real changes happened in the small daily details. How he offered help, how he tried not to repeat his mistakes, how he genuinely shared in the joys of even the most mundane days. With each passing day, I felt a new world awakening within me. A world where fear and resentment didn't reign, but where there was room for love, creativity, and self-discovery. I started painting, writing poetry, experimenting with recipes that filled the house with the aromas of fresh herbs and the warmth of home. All of this became my way of reclaiming a lost sense of self, of regaining faith that life could be beautiful even after the hardest trials. Sometimes, when night fell over the city, I would sit by the window with a notebook and pen, writing down thoughts that had once seemed inexpressible. Each line was a small step toward freedom, a vow to myself. I won't let pain define my future. And though the past had left deep scars, I learned to see in them not only pain, but also reminders that I was alive, that every wound was a testament to how much I had survived and grown stronger. I understand that the path to full healing is still long, and there are new trials ahead. But now, I'm no longer afraid to face them head on. I've learned to accept my vulnerability, to find wisdom in every loss, and to believe that in every ending lies the beginning of something new and beautiful. Waking up to the early morning sun, I felt its warm rays filtering through the curtains, gently caressing my face, as if reminding me that even after the longest winter, spring always comes. In that moment, I knew. It was time for a new beginning. The long months of struggle, tears, and painful memories began to dissolve in the light of dawn, giving me hope and confidence that life could still offer beauty, if only I was willing to accept it. In the kitchen, filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread and strong coffee, Alexei was already preparing breakfast. His quiet good morning sounded sincere, and I felt the weight of the past beginning to fade. We were no longer the people who had lived in the grip of resentment and misunderstanding. Together, we were learning to listen to each other, understanding that true forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain, but about accepting it as part of our journey and moving forward. We've been through the storm, and now our home is filled with new light, he said softly, handing me a cup of coffee. I smiled in return, feeling each sip warm not just my body, but also my soul. In that magical morning hour, when everything seemed filled with renewed life, I remembered those long days of solitude and the nights when my heart had beat in time with the rain. Those experiences had become not just wounds, but also lessons that taught me to cherish every moment. I started painting again. Soft, light hues appeared on the canvas, symbolizing hope and forgiveness. Each painting was a small step toward healing, a reminder that even from the darkest night, a dawn can emerge. Our children, playing in the garden, filled the house with joyful laughter and vitality. Their carefree voices became the most sincere proof to me that life goes on, and that even after pain, happiness is possible. We spent evenings together, walking through the blooming yard, where every plant seemed like a living symbol of renewal. With each step, I learned to let go of the past and look forward to a future filled with new dreams and plans. One evening, as the soft light of the setting sun painted everything in golden hues, I sat on the porch and felt an extraordinary calm blossom in my chest. Alexei sat beside me, and we silently watched the horizon. In that silence, there was no room for unspoken words or regrets, only the understanding that our shared journey, though scarred, was leading us toward renewal. You know, I used to be afraid to love, afraid to believe I could forgive, I began quietly. He turned to me, his gaze filled with tenderness and sincere remorse. I understand, and I'm grateful for this second chance. Together, we can build something new, beautiful, and real. Since then, every day has become a small celebration of life. We learn to appreciate simple joys, morning walks, quiet evenings spent reading, cooking dinner together, where even ordinary dishes seemed filled with love and care. In every glance, in every touch, there was a quiet confidence that the past no longer defined our future. I rediscovered myself, learning to accept my vulnerability as a source of strength, not weakness. Finding inner peace, I realized that true happiness lies in the ability to forgive, not just others, but myself. Forgiveness became my gift, one I gave to myself, allowing light to enter the darkest corners of my heart. Today, when I look back, I see not only pain and betrayal, but also an endless sea of lessons that made me stronger. Our home, once shrouded in doubt, is now filled with laughter, creativity, and love. Together with Alexei and our children, we continue to write a new story, one where each new day brings joy and every challenge becomes a stepping stone toward happiness. I'm grateful to fate for all the trials, because they led me to this moment where I can confidently say, life is beautiful. And though there may still be challenges ahead, I know I can face them with an open heart, filled with love and hope. Dear listeners, I want you to remember, even after the fiercest storm, a bright dawn always comes. Love, forgive, and don't be afraid to start over. May each of your days be filled with genuine joy, and may your soul always find comfort in the simplest, most genuine moments. Subscribe to my channel. Your support gives me the strength to share this story, to believe in the best, and to find light even in the darkest corners of life. And so, I met my rebirth, with love, wisdom, and faith that the true beauty of life lies in every moment when we choose to love despite everything. This was our happy ending, not an end, but the beginning of a new, brighter, and more meaningful chapter, where every morning is a chance to find happiness again.